إن الحمد لله تعالى نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah. We praise and we seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our soul and from our sinful deeds. Those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can misguide them. Those who are not guided by Allah, there is no guide for them. I bear witness that there is no deity, there is no God worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his servant and messenger. O you who believe, revere Allah as he should be revered, and die not except as Muslims. Amma ba'd. Welcome to the Islamic Society Leading American Muslims, an organization established to conduct da'wah, to invite people to the way of Islam. Last week I did 3 lectures at Eastern Florida State College. We gave away 73 Qurans last week. We had a meeting last week at St. Timothy's Catholic Community where we did the interfaith prayer service, and we actually made headlines. One of the statements in my sermon, or my devotion I would call it, it was very short, but was that terrorists are murderers, not Muslims. And so that was the headline in the post there in the villages, and if we could get a copy of that and make it available, we'll post it. We've been trying to get a copy of it, but at the meeting, and the meeting was amazing because the feedback is how valuable it is for us to take a stand, how valuable it is for us to be heard at this time. And we literally had people standing in line at the reception line at the end of it, stating how relieved they were to hear the truth about Islam. So that's what we're doing. Maysoon was a faithful student. She was there, mashallah. And Maysoon, after class, if you want to share something about that, that would be great because of the camera. What we will do is if you have questions, write them down. I will cut off the class a little early so we can handle any questions. And I want to welcome Kat back today. And Anas, who was at the potluck last night. They are back with us again this morning, mashallah. That's wonderful. And is there anyone else here for the first time? Would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Ina Nathan. I'm from Pakistan, Islamabad, Pakistan.
Mashallah, well, we're very happy to have you. Who told you about us?
Your missus. Actually, I met her through Dr. Shanda.
Oh yes, okay, alhamdulillah. Well, anybody else for the first time? Yes, please begin.
My name is Rita. I'm from Morocco.
Mashallah.
I heard about this from Abila.
Alhamdulillah. You get a gold star, Abila, for your missionary. Tariq got 4 gold stars last night. Yes.
I was her second gold star. My name is Munira. I also learned about the fast Filipina. I'm originally from Jamaica, and I've been a learner for 10 years.
Well, welcome, welcome. And for all of you that are here for the first time, we hope that it will be the first of many times that you will be with us and that you will become a part of our family. We are a nurturing family. The one thing that you can count on here, and if it doesn't happen, let me know about it. You will not be criticized, you will not be castigated, you will not be indicted, and there are no haram police allowed in this group. It's just not allowed. If that's what you're interested in, this is the wrong club for you. We're here to nurture, to empower, to educate, to love. Because we are the greatest love that a person can have is to love someone for the sake of Allah. And so that's what we endeavor to do. I would like to ask you to pray for Faye. Her father passed away. He's 93 or 4. I think it's 94. And last week we were celebrating the fact that he had bounced back and got a message, I believe it was last night or on the way home or this morning. I can't remember because I've been up since 3 o'clock. And So, alhamdulillah, please pray for Faye at this time, because we know what a void is created when somebody loses their parents. So please pray for Faye. Please don't forget to pass the box around today, because we obviously have to pay rent for this room. And so anyone who would like to help us do that, we would be grateful for your help. And we are grateful for every donation that you make to this organization. It is a tax-free organization, a 501c3. Your donations are tax deductible, and it is used so that we can do dawah. So thank you again. Without further ado, today's the whole focus of today will be looking at verse 189 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and a theme that we've seen since we looked at verse 177. There's a theme. And so I'm wondering if anybody has any idea what that theme is. But we're going to be looking at that. So let's read the verse. They ask you, O Muhammad, about the crescents. Say, these are signs to mark fixed periods of time for mankind and for the pilgrimage. It is not righteousness, albir, that you enter the houses from the back, but albir is from taqwa. So enter houses through their proper doors and have taqwa of Allah, that you may be successful. Now, interestingly enough, there are a lot of misnomers about this verse out there, but the piece that I want us to focus on is the piece of what is righteousness. So as we go through this lecture today, I want you to be pondering, reflecting, and contemplating on what righteousness is. Now, do I need to click it, or does it automatically click up there?
No, when you move it, it'll move it.
So did it move?
Okay. Yes.
So, I just want to go through this briefly from verse 177, and you'll see the themes that we've been looking at over the last couple of months. There's this theme of righteousness. So in verse 177, it tells you what righteousness is not, and then it tells you what righteousness is. And then every verse up to 189 gives you a component of righteousness. So it is not righteousness that you turn your face towards east, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah, one, and the last day, and the angels, and the book, and the messenger, to spend of your substance out of a love for Him, for your kin, that's supposed to be, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which you have made, to be firm and patient in pain and adversity. I was dictating this, and throughout all periods of panic. So we're going to come back and look at the components of this verse in a little bit, but I would like to just review the verses we've looked at, and just so that you can see what is also addressed as righteousness. Because we hear a lot of people talk about, oh, he's self-righteous, or this and that. But rarely do we, at least this is what I hear anyway, do we talk about righteousness in a positive and constructive way. It's almost presented almost in a negative way today. So 6 injunctions appear regarding righteousness. In verses 178 and 179, Islam has much mitigated the horrors of the pre-Islamic custom of retaliation. So, in other words, we studied qisas, which was the law of equality that came about in Islam. So prior to that, in the tribal warfare, if someone lost a life, then they would just go into war until one tribe was completely destroyed. In order to meet strict claims of justice, equality is prescribed with a strong recommendation for mercy and forgiveness. So we know that in the Holy Quran it says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but forgiveness is better. So in the Bible we see an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and that's how it is. So with the abrogation, with the coming of the final revelation, the Holy Quran, there's an elevation to where people are supposed to move into a space, and this is part of righteousness, that we are forgiving, that we pardon. And we've done lots of lectures on pardoning and forgiving. Qisas is often translated retaliation, which tends to mean return evil for evil. So most people, when you think of retaliation, you think of, I'll get you back. But when we think of retaliation in the Islamic paradigm, we should think about, well, I'm always going to retaliate, but I'm going to return good for evil. That's the Islamic definition of retaliation. Be a great thing for jeopardy, by the way, Susan. So, retaliation tends to be about, I'm going to get you back, and would more fitly apply to the blood feuds of the days of ignorance. So when we see retaliation in that regard, or in that paradigm, then we're actually seeing it in jahiliyyah, in ignorance. We are seeing it the way that people saw it before Islam. Islam says if you must take a life, at least it should be some measure of equality in it. Now let's look at something even before I go into this. The Holy Quran says that if you take a life without just cause, which is self-defense, treason, murder, then it is like taking all of mankind. And don't count on this, but I think it's Surah 5 verse 32. And how many mankind or humans are there in the world? Somewhere between 7 and 8 billion. So to take a life without just cause Islamically is like killing 8 billion people. To give a life, the same verse says, is like giving life to 8 billion people. Or 7 billion, whichever one you want to use. I think the point is made. The killing of the slave of the tribe, should not involve a blood feud where many free men would be killed, but the law of mercy, where it can be obtained by consent with reasonable compensation, would be better. So Islam actually introduced a concept of blood money, which if someone in your family was murdered, the courts obviously would try them for murder. But let's say it was manslaughter or some other case, then you could forgive the person and they would compensate you with some money to buffer that loss, rather than you taking another life. Because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the sanctity of life is like that of the Kaaba. So that Kaaba that we circumambulate 7 times when we do Hajj, that we pray towards, all the Muslims in the world pray towards, the sanctity of life is like that Kaaba. And that's all life. That's not just Muslims. And that's how we should see and respect people. Islam's law of equality addresses 3 conditions in civil society: free for the free, slave for the slave, and woman for the woman. Amongst free men and women are all equal. You cannot ask that because a wealthy or highborn or influential man is killed, his life is equal to 2 or 3 lives among the poor. So Islam doesn't see that. Islam sees that all mankind are equal. The only thing that makes one human better than another one is piety, which is righteousness. So often if you look at the verses regarding piety and you substitute righteousness, you'll sort of get an idea of just how much we are enjoined toward righteousness. And today we'll be looking at that and some of the definitions from ahadith as well. Nor in cases of murder can you go into the value or abilities of the slave. So you can't say, well, you know, this slave can lift 500 pounds. So we got to find, if he did something bad, we got to find a slave that can lift 500 pounds. So, you know, this is how modern men seem to think. And that's like retaliation. You know, I'm going to get you back, and I'm going to get you back. No, you hit me harder. No, I hit, and it just goes on and on and on. So a woman is mentioned separately because her position as a mother or an economic worker is different. She does not form a 3rd class, but a division in the other 2 classes. So here again, it's about equality. So if you listen to Fox and CNN, they would like you to believe that the woman is nothing. The woman walks behind the husband. But what we know is that without the woman, we would not be here. That women are the footstool to paradise. That women are considered crystal by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And he said in his final sermon, the last thing he said was, be good to your woman. So this is a part of righteousness. The sanctity of life, I already mentioned that. One life having been lost, do not waste many lives in retaliation. And most that the law take one life under strictly prescribed conditions and shut the door to private vengeance or tribal retaliation. But if the agreed party consents, and this condition of consent is laid down to prevent worse evils, forgiveness and brotherly love is better, and the door of mercy is kept open. And we really need, in this time that we are in, particularly with the political climate that's out there right now, we really need to be merciful, to recognize that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came as a mercy to mankind, and therefore we, if we are emulating the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then we want to be merciful. In Western law, no felony can be compounded. Islamic jurists have carefully laid down that the law of qisas refers to murder only. It is not applicable to manslaughter due to a mistake or an accident. So I just want you to sort of get that general theme that we covered. Remember, we covered qisas in great detail. How many remember that? Okay, Abila's raising her hand. Okay, alhamdulillah. It was a very intensive class about qisas. In verse 178 to 179, O you who believe, all qisas, the law of equality is prescribed for you in case of murder. The free for the free, the slave for the slave, and the female for the female. But if the killer is forgiven by the brother or the relatives of the killed against blood money, then it should be sought in a good manner and paid to him respectfully. This is an alleviation and a mercy from your Lord. So after this, whoever transgresses the limits, kills the killer after taking the blood money, he shall have a painful torment. So let's say that it happens and you say, okay, I'm going to let you off the hook, just give our family $100,000 and you're forgiven. And then he says, oh yeah, I got my money, now I'm going to get it. Then you actually will go to hell. This is what this is saying. You're taking your life, and it's even more, because not only have you taken a life, you've stolen $100,000 in bad will. And there is, yes.
Can you, when say something happens and somebody has to pay blood money, can you forgive and refuse the blood money? I mean, or do you have
You could forgive and refuse it, yes. The whole idea in the Islamic concept or paradigm is equality, though, and it's justice. So how can I soften the blow of this loss? So I give you blood money. But this is the spirit. And it's the same way if you look at divorce in Islam. It says that if you cannot live with them peacefully, then depart from them amicably. And that they should live in the same lifestyle that you live. And so, but what happens? As soon as the D word comes out, people's claws seem to grow and they become like animals. And it's just so destructive. Totally contrary to righteousness. And totally contrary to how the Quran says to do it. So it says, O men of understanding, that you may obtain taqwa. And we know that taqwa is God-fear, sometimes translated as consciousness of God. And also another way of looking at it is that that is piety. That is righteousness. Verse 180 to 182 addresses the righteousness in regard to bequests. So here we're talking about the righteousness in terms of your making a will and how it should be done. Now, there are some abrogations that have taken place, but I didn't want to deter from this verse and go into that today. But there were some abrogations, which are times when, for example, one of the abrogations is that when alcohol was first mentioned in the Quran, it said, don't go to your prayers before. So people were still drinking, but don't go pray while you're drunk. And then Allah completely prohibited alcohol. And similarly, this is a verse of abrogation where later on the parents were not included in the will in another verse in the Quran. It is prescribed when death approaches any of you, if he leaves any goods, that he make a bequest to parents and next of kin, according to a reasonable usage. This is due from the God-fearing. If anyone changes the bequest after hearing it, the guilt shall be on those who made the change, for Allah hears and knows all things. But if anyone fears penalty or wrongdoing on the part of the testator and makes peace between the parties concerned, there is no wrong in him, for Allah is all forgiving. Now what's really interesting, if you look at these 6 injunctions in terms of righteousness, and you look at the signs of a hypocrite in Hadith and the Quran, and the Hadith that's coming to me is that a hypocrite is one that lies. Whatever he tells you is not true. He exaggerates, and when he argues with you, he will usurp his power. One of the Hadith says that the sign of a hypocrite is they don't keep their agreements with you. So whatever they tell you, they don't fulfill their contract. So it's the very opposite of righteousness if you look at these things. And then we looked at verse 183 through 187, which addresses righteousness and fasting and itikaf. So here again, righteousness is being addressed. How are we righteous in our fasting? And of course, next week will be Mother's Day, and I always do a tribute to mothers, and I hope the mothers will come here for that. Oh, I'm sorry, it's the week after. Thank you for helping me with my Gregorian calendar here. So the week after is Mother's Day. So we have, I believe, 6 weeks before the month of Ramadan. And let me know if that's wrong too. But I think it's 6 weeks. June the 5th will be the last class that we have, and inshallah, Ramadan will come in on Monday, June the 6th. So here again, we looked at this. We will be coming back and reviewing this in much more detail. Because last year, I went into the inner dimensions of fasting, and a lot of people were like, really like tired of hearing it at the end. But really and truly, if you don't know how to be righteous in your fasting, then it's really in vain. You are basically wasting your time. Allah doesn't need that, and He said that in the Quran. He doesn't need us to be hungry and thirsty. He needs us to reel ourselves in, control what we do, restrain ourselves to obtain God consciousness, piety, righteousness. O you who believe, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, that you may learn self-restraint. The whole idea of this month, righteousness, is learning self-restraint. Not going to iftar and see if you can out-eat the guy on your right and the guy on your left. But restraining yourself. Isn't it interesting, and I have to say this, and I'm going to keep saying it till my toes are facing the Qibla, isn't it interesting that our grocery bills go up exponentially in the month of Ramadan, and yet we as Muslims say this is the month of abstinence. This means that we are not achieving righteousness in the month of Ramadan. We are achieving indulgence, and we are just satisfying our lower desires. Fasting for a fixed number of days, but if any of you is ill or on a journey, the prescribed number should be made up. So it's actually righteousness to take advantage of the concessions that Allah has given you. So if you're traveling, then you can break your fast and you can make it up in days later. Allah likes for us to, it is righteousness for us to take advantage of the concessions that Allah has given us. For those who can do it without hardship, with hardship, is a ransom, the feeding of one that is indigent. But he that will give more of his own free will, it is better for him, and it is better for you that you fast, if you only knew. Ramadan is the month in which was sent down the Quran as a guidance to mankind. Brother, if you'd like to take a chair from outside.
No, actually, I prefer to stand for a bit. I've been sitting all morning.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to make it available to you. And clear signs for guidance and judgment between right and wrong. So every one of you who is present at his home during this month should spend it in fasting, but if anyone is ill or on a journey, the prescribed period should be made up by days later. Allah intends every facility for you. He does not want to put you in difficulties. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify Him in that. He has guided you, and perchance you shall be grateful. When my servants ask thee concerning me, I am indeed close to them. I listen to the prayer of every supplicant, that's supposed to be suppliant, when he calleth on me. Let them also with the will listen to my call and believe in me, that they may walk in the right way. permitted to you on the night of the fast is the approach to your wives. And then the verse goes into, they are a garment for you and you are a garment for them, which is the whole khutbah. Allah knoweth that you used to do secretly among yourselves, but He turned to you and forgave you. So now associate with them and seek what Allah hath ordained for you, and eat and drink until the white thread of dawn appears to you distinct from its black thread. Then complete your fast till the night appears, but do not associate with your wives while you are in retreat in the masjid. And here we are talking about the righteousness of itikaf. And there are many ahadith that address the righteousness of itikaf. So the wife of the Prophet sometimes came to the door of the masjid when he was in itikaf, and there's one record of him combing her hair. But as you know, in itikaf, this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. If we were doing itikaf, chances are we wouldn't be able to comb our wife's hair without wanting to leave the masjid. Allahu Alam. But righteousness is covered here again about Ramadan and itikaf. So verse 188 addresses righteousness in terms of not wasting and moderation. So we talked about for 2 weeks tabdil. And we really, covered it from A to Z. And there again, there's this whole concept of righteousness and how we spend and what we do with our money. So verse 189 and 190 addresses righteousness regarding the Hajj and Jihad. So we will come back to examine this verse in more detail, because this is one of the verses that is most often taken out of context by murderers, so-called terrorists. Okay? And we'll come back and deal with that inshallah next week. But today we're going to focus on righteousness. So let's look at the verse again, and then we're going to look at some hadiths inshallah regarding this subject. They ask you, O Muhammad, about the crescent. Say, these are signs to mark fixed periods of time for mankind and for the pilgrimage. It is not albeit piety, righteousness, etc., that you enter the houses from the back, but albeit virtue, piety, righteousness is from taqwa, if you fear Allah. So enter houses through their proper doors and have taqwa of Allah, that you may be successful. So here again there's this implication that in order to be successful as a Muslim, you must be righteous. And all of these themes of righteousness are in all of these verses that we've been looking at. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress the limits. Here again, this is about righteousness. So when we look and we see countries that say they are Muslim countries transgressing the limits, we have to know that that can't be called a Muslim country. It can only be called a country that's highly populated by people that call themselves Muslims. So we need to correct this. And every college that I speak in, and right now we are, last week was 3 speeches, the week before was 4. So at the rate we're going, we will do approximately 200 college speeches this year. And slay them wherever you catch them, and turn them out from wherever they have turned you out, for tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. But fight them not at the sacred masjid, unless they first fight you there. But if they fight you, slay them. Such is the reward of those who suppress faith. And this is the verse that we'll come back to, because I want you to understand the asbab al-nusul, the reason and occasion of this verse, and what this verse is actually referring to, because it is one of the biggest misused and misunderstood verses out there today regarding so-called murders, terrorists. So there were a lot of superstitions that were connected to this verse. There are a lot of superstitions just as there are today. There are people today that can't start their day without reading their zodiac sign in the Sentinel or whatever it's called. So there are all these superstitions. There are all these beliefs about moons. And so sometimes you meet somebody and you hear them say, oh, what sign are you? What zodiac sign are you? And it's because of this, the remnants of this. So there were many superstitions connected with the new moon as there are in the present day. And we are told righteousness is disregard these superstitions. As a measure of time, when the lunar calendar is used, the new moon is one of great signs. However, it is the birthing of a new period. And it's amazing because this crescent, this beautiful crescent, is oftentimes not visible with the naked eye. There are certain places in the world that you absolutely cannot see it. It's not possible to see it because of the planetary alignment. But those of you who have seen it, it's amazing that out of this birthing of this tiny crescent, it appears, it's just a slither in the sky, always comes something great. And of course, the month of Ramadan is one of those signs. Muslim festivals, including the pilgrimage, are fixed by the appearance of the new moon. So all of the great things in Islam are fixed by the appearance of the new moon. But it doesn't have anything to do with the zodiac sign. It has to do with the sign of Allah. That's the greatness of it. The Arabs, among other superstitions, had one which made them enter their houses by the back door during or after the pilgrimage. And it's really, I've heard people take this verse completely out of context and make all kinds of strange things about it. We're going to talk about what is the correct opinions predominantly about this verse. But people have twisted it to say it means this and this and this, and it doesn't mean that at all. Al-Bukhari recorded that Al-Bara said, during the time of Jahiliyyah, they used to enter the houses from the back upon assuming the ihram. And thereafter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse 189. So they would actually climb over their back walls in their ihram and go into their houses. Why? Because they lived in the sacred precinct, which is probably hard for us to really imagine, because those of us who have been to Hajj, we did not actually live in that area. We probably were either in the tents, or I stayed in Azazizia, which is across the bridge from the Haram, and I used to walk about 13 miles a day. But these were the people's homes. It was a very different sort of setting, so they would go this back way. Abu Dawud al-Tayalisi recorded the same hadith from Al-Bara, but with the wording, the Ansar used to enter their houses from the back when returning from a journey. And this verse was revealed. So we have two sort of authentic sources in the classic sense of what this meant. Al-Hasan said, when some people during the time of Jahiliyyah would leave home to travel and then decide not to travel, they would not enter the house from its door, rather they would climb over the back wall. Allah the Exalted said, it is not piety and righteousness that you enter the houses from the back. And so some people take this out of context and they take it literally, and I've known sometimes reverts read this verse and then it's not explained to them. So they go to somebody's house and they say, oh, well, come around, come to the back. And say, no, I can't. The Quran says I can't go in the back door. So it's okay to go in people's back door with their permission. So this is disapproved here, for there is no virtue in any such artificial restrictions. All virtue proceeds from the love and the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, entering houses through the proper doors is now a Muslim proverb that means the following things. If you enter a society, respect its manners and customs. If you want to achieve an object honorably, go about it openly and not by the back door. Do not be about the push. If you wish success in an undertaking, provide all the necessary instruments for it. So these are various things that people have also said are the meaning of this. Allah knows best. The subject of the new moon provides a good transition between the Ramadan fast, which begins and ends with the new moon, the pilgrimage, whose 10 days commences with the new moon, and the war which Islam had to wage in self-defense against the pagans, who wanted to exclude them from the pilgrimage after they had driven them out of house and home. They ask you, O Muhammad, about the crescents. Say, these are signs to mark fixed periods of time for mankind, so that they mark their acts of worship. The iddah, the period of time a divorced woman or a widow is required to wait before remarrying, of their women, and the time of their Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca. So in Islam we know that many things are measured by time. This many days for this and this many days for something else. Abdul Razak reported that Ibn Umar narrated that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah has made the crescent signs to mark fixed periods of time for mankind. Hence fast on the seeing it, the crescent for Ramadan, and break the fast on seeing it, the crescent of Shawwal. If the crescent was obscured to you, then count 30 days, mark that month as 30 days. So here again we see how the crescent is used as a sign from Allah to actually guide us on when to start and when to finish something. An attribute that implies that a person's actions are justified and can have the connotation that the person has been judged or reckoned as leading a life that is pleasing to God. So this is supposedly a definition of righteousness. So, you know, we may or may not upload this class today because I want to have my didactic class. And I want to hear just various people, what comes to your mind? Anyone who wants to volunteer when you hear the word righteousness. Sadiq, it looks like you got something going in there. I can see it. Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Honorable, somebody with high morals.
Somebody that's honorable with high morals. Very good. What else?